This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. So what I'm going to start doing is weekly, quick, painless Q&As slash trainings. I'll pick a different subject each week, and I'll spend the first half of it going over whatever the topic is for that day, and then the second half we will reserve for any questions anyone has. So when we get to that point, don't be shy. If you have a question, jump in and ask. I'm sure others may have questions or the same question as well. You can also use the chat along the way. If you don't want to forget your question, you can type it in the chat, and I will check the chat at the end of the actual demo part and answer those. Or again, you can wait until the end and unmute yourself and just talk over your microphone. So the topic for today is email groups and reminder groups. So I'm sure some of you may be using one or the other, or used it a little bit and may have some questions. So I'll just kind of go over everything in general for that. So we'll start with the reminder groups. So what that is essentially it's a way to add batches of reminders that you can pre-set up ahead of time and apply in bulk to a client's trip or to a group profile or wherever you want. So let's take this trip, for example. It's a client's trip to Mexico here in January. And let's just say I booked it today. Now, typically, what was done in the past is, if there are things you don't want to forget to do for this client, you would have to go into the trip. You'd have to click new reminder, and you'd have to put these in individually. So, let's say the first one I want to send out, say like 25 days prior to the trip. You would have to look at the trip date here on the trip, and then you'd have to kind of do the math to figure out, okay, what is 25 days prior to this? And then when you add the reminder, you'd have to, put that date in there. Let's just say it's December something, and then type in whatever you want to say and click create. Or if you had 3 or 4 things you needed to do, you would put in the first one and click create and add new, and that would save this one and then give you this exact screen again blank for you to fill out for the second one. And you would just repeat those steps until you get to the last one, then you'd click create. And that would add those reminders down here to the reminder section of the trip. And it would also, of course, show those on the agent reminders dashboard panel. You could do similar things for groups, or you can add reminders to a group. I've already have 2 in here. I'm not sure what they are, but those are in there. So let's delete those out of there. So again, in that example, I would have to go in and click new reminder and type them in manually from scratch. So in order to save users time, we created what are called the reminder groups. So you can find those by going to utilities and reminder groups. And I'm just going to open this in a new tab here. And so when you want to create these, you just add a new group. And the most important thing of this is one, name it something that you're going to recognize from this name alone, because when you might have several different groups of reminders for different situations. So you want to be able to name them so you know what is what when you go to apply them. The second important thing is the trigger screen. This determines 2 things. First, it determines what screen you can apply these to, whether it be, in this case, the group profile, or I could select trip or reservation or payment. In all reality, I don't ever recommend using reservation because the triggers aren't that good for it. And I can't think of any scenarios where you'd use payment either. So really, you're going to stick with these 3. And I would say for reminders, most often you're going to be using trip as a trigger. The second thing this determines is what you can use to set when those reminders are actually due. So if I select trip, I can only use events that are tied to the actual trip, like the trip date or the final payment due date or things like that. Same thing with, the group profile. If I select group profile, I can really only use the trip date on the group profile or the final payment due date on the group profile. Now, this is important because if you don't pay attention to this and you click save and you start adding reminders in and then you realize you selected the wrong trigger screen, you cannot change this after the fact. So if I go into this all trips one you can see now the trigger screen is grayed out. That means I can only apply the reminders under this reminder group to a client's trip screen. If I'm on the reservation screen, it won't work. You won't see it there. You won't see it on the group profile screen, none of that. So the two I'm going to focus on are trip level and group level. So that's one thing you have to determine. How do you want to set these up? Now, like I said, in most cases, I would say you're going to select trip. So you're going to apply them to a client's trip as you book it. Now, if you book a lot of groups, you have an option of creating reminders under the group profile as a whole rather than each individual trip that is under that group. So you click add new reminder group, you name it. I named it all trips, triggers from the trip screen. I'm the group owner because I created that. And this is if you want to share it with other agents within your account. So if you want to do the work to create these reminders and share them with others on your account, check this or leave this box checked and then click create. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the task, and this is where you're going to actually enter each individual reminder. So again, these are reminders for your dashboard, the things that you need to do specifically. So the first thing that I put in here is maybe I want to put in a reminder in to email the resort something. So I came in here, this is what it's called. This is the text that you will see on your dashboard. So email resort for any requests. And then you can see here the triggers you can use are the things from the trip screen. Now, a lot of this stuff is triggers that are from like the canceled booking info section. So you can't really use those because you typically, if it's a live booking, you don't have any data in there. So really there's four main triggers that I see a good use for. Created date is the date the trip was created, which is typically when they booked. That is good to use for things that you may need to remember to do shortly after a client has booked their trip. The second one would be final payment due date, followed by trip date or return date. So in this case, I want to email the resort or remind myself to email the resort something 10 days before the client's trip date. Now, another thing to note here is if you are sharing it with other agents, you still only want to check your name here. Because if I were to select, say, Lisa and Alicia here, anytime I use this reminder group, when I apply that, it'll apply that reminder to me, Alicia, and Lisa, which I don't want because oftentimes these are things that I need to do, not me and several other people. And then this box is for if you wanted to change like the interval or like when it was due for all of the ones that you've already set up, for this, say 6 months ago. If you decided 10 days was too early or not early enough, you could change that to, let's say it wasn't early enough. I could change that to a 15, check this box and then save, and that would update all of the ones that I applied in the past that still haven't been, they're not due yet, if that makes sense. And then here, default to weekdays. So what this does is if whatever date, 10 days before the trip date happens to land on like a Saturday or a Sunday, instead it will change it to the Friday before the weekend. That way, when you apply these, you'll never have reminders that land on a weekend day. So anyway, I put this one in, then I put in one for pre-register. I don't want to forget to pre-register the booking with the hotel chain or tourism board. And in this case, I want it to remind me 15 days before the trip date. Maybe I want to ship out a package to the client with maybe, some branded materials, luggage tags or koozies or whatever. That's going to remind me 20 days before the trip date. And then finally, this one I use the return date. Maybe I want to actually mail them an actual physical thank you card. In this case, I've set it to be to trigger to be due 2 days before the return date, with the idea that if you do it on the day that it's due or maybe the day before it's due, hopefully it will arrive, shortly before they return or right as they return. So I put all these in one time, and you can use these for anything you want. These are just some examples. And because I've selected this at a trip level, anytime I book a client's trip, once I get everything put in, I can just say I want to apply a whole group of reminders, select the one that I want, which will be the all trips, and then it will automatically do the math for me based on that client's trip date or return date, and these are the dates that those will be due. Now, let's say, for this particular one, I'm not going to send this client a pre-travel package, so I don't want to remind myself to do so. So I could ignore this one, but I'll keep the rest and click apply. And when you click apply, it'll take you down here and it'll show you that here are the 3 reminders that you've applied in bulk to this client's trip, and those will also show on my dashboard. So if we look at the beginning, I guess all of January, if I refresh this, and then I scroll down to January of next year. Sorry, I have so many old outdated reminders on this account. Okay, so you will see here are those reminders I put in. All right, now you can also create these at a group profile level. So this is where you kind of have to make a decision for yourself. So let's look at, I created one for group reminders for actual group bookings. And so I've got one for check air. Maybe I want to just double check to make sure if I'm booking a group and I'm not booking their air and I need to collect all that information, all the flight schedules to send to the transfer company, maybe 50 days before the trip date, I want to check to make sure I have everyone's flight schedules. Now, you could put this in as at a trip level reminder and apply it to all of the trips that are part of a group. However, let's say you have 30 rooms booked under a group, that's going to add 30 of that same reminder to your dashboard to cover you for everyone. Now, the benefit to that is if, say 20 of those 30 have sent you their air, you can mark all 20 of those complete and you still have 10 left over. Those are the people who have not sent you their air. The downside to doing it at a trip level like that, though, is you have to apply it 30 times, and it's going to really clog up your reminders section of your dashboard because you're going to have 30 of the exact same reminder just for every single person. Whereas because of this, I've done it at a group level. It's not going to tell me individually who I have air for, who I don't have air for. It's just a generic reminder to say, hey, check everyone in this group, make sure that you have their flight schedules. And then that would tell me, obviously, to email someone that maybe I'm missing to let me know, or to let them know they need to send me their flights. And, check rooms. This would be, if you have a contracted group and you have a date where penalties go into effect and you want to, they're going to need to drop some rooms prior to that, you could set up a reminder. You could actually set up a few for that same thing, first reduced rooms, second reduced rooms, or whatever. And you set the, you can use this or this for the trigger dates. So the final payment due date or the trip date. So 80 before the trip date on the group profile. And then same idea, when you are in the group, you could say you want to apply a reminder group. You select the one that you want, which is the group reminders. Again, it will do the math for you, and you can click apply. Now, after you apply them, if you need to adjust these dates, you can do so. So let's say for most groups, let's go back in here. You want to reduce rooms, say 80 days before the trip date. But let's say this group, you need to do it a little bit earlier than that. You can apply them as is, and then you can click in here and you can just change this date. So I could back it up, say 2 weeks from then, and say on this particular one, I want it to be due on the 10th instead. Click save, and it will update that to that new date. So you can always change it after it's been applied for that specific group or for that specific trip. So we created that first, and when we initially created this, when I was testing it out, I created this generic reminders group. And in there, I started putting things like this, like maybe I would want to, remind myself to reach out to the client about excursion options to send them 90 days before the trip date. And maybe I want to email them to have them check their passport, make sure they can find it and it's valid and all of that. 60 days before the trip date. And then once I started creating those, I realized that a lot of those reminders that I could think of were simply reminders to tell the agent or me to go email something to the client. And then I started thinking that we already had automated emails. Why should we have to do these steps? Why couldn't we create a feature that's similar to this, but instead of being reminders for your dashboard, make them automated emails to go out to the client? And that's where the second part comes into play, which is the email groups. Those can be found also under utilities and under email groups here. So the majority of setting these up is exactly the same as the reminder groups. When you first click add new group, you have to name it and you have to select the trigger screen. You can't change the trigger screen after the fact. The difference though is the second step where you're actually entering the individual tasks. And in these cases, they are going to be emails to go directly to the client automatically. Now, again, just like with the reminder groups, you can set them up at a group profile level or a trip level. In this example, I'll spend a lot more time talking about trips because I think those are used more widely. You can set these up however you want. You can break them into categories however you want. I personally like the idea of sending them at a trip level and doing it by destination. So I can, put in Disney, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Mexico, anywhere I might sell. So here I've got my Jamaica emails, and I'll use that as an example because I actually have quite a few emails typed up in there. Triggered from the trip, and I want to share this with other agents because, again, if I'm going to take the time to set these up, I don't want to have to have my agents do the same work over and over, each one of them that wants to use these as well. So if I'm going to do the work, I might as well share them with the rest of the team so everyone can use these. So here in the task, I've created several emails. So, one thing I think of when I, think of traveling to Jamaica is Club Mo Bay at the airport. Maybe that's a service that you want to offer to your clients, but you maybe don't have time for every single client to offer that. But if you can automate it, now you do have that time. So you just create a simple email like this. You can throw pictures in there and, copy and paste from the website to show what they get with the arrival and the departure. There's also a merge field in here that you don't have elsewhere in the system, this 60 before trip date. And the way you would use that would be for like deadlines or when you can do something. So you can put something like this, and what the client will see in their actual email that it sends them is an actual date, whatever date equals 60 days before their trip date. Now you can also change that 60 to whatever number you want. If I put a 30 in there, it'll calculate whatever date equals 30 days before the trip date. You could do 100, 5, 10, whatever you want. And again, you select the trigger, which would be, in this case, trip date, 80 days before. And you can do one for excursions, as well. So those two Club Mo Bay excursions, those are add-ons. You don't always have time to offer things like that, so you can automate it. Now you do. And even if only, some clients book one or the other or both, who cares? Because you're still getting extra commission on a chunk of your bookings that you weren't going to get any other way because you don't have time to offer all of these options. You can also use it for fun, extra stuff like, maybe send a local authentic recipe to the destination they're going to just to kind of build some excitement. This probably won't make you any money, but it builds rapport with your clients. So, I put in the cliched jerk chicken for Jamaica, threw that in, and you could have that send out. You could do an email for any last minute things that you want to send your client prior to their trip. So just a few ideas in there is maybe apps that you recommend they download ahead of time so they can communicate with friends and family back home. Currency info, do they need to exchange currency? Do they need voltage converters? Are there any forms that they need to fill out online ahead of time prior to their trip? You can put links to it in there, and things like that. So again, once you set these up one time, now every time you book a trip to Jamaica, you would say, let's apply a whole batch of emails, select the one that you want, and it will do the math for you. You can ignore any that don't apply to this client, like let's say they're going to Secrets, Wild Orchid, or St. James, or whatever. You don't want to send them info on couples resorts, so you could ignore these two. And then finally, you have one other option in here that you don't have in the reminder groups, this toggle here. So if I turn this off, it's only going to send this to the lead passenger of this trip, which is good for like a family vacation where maybe you're only in contact with one person anyway. You don't need to send it to everyone. However, if it's more like a kind of a roommate situation where you want to send this out to each person that is on this trip, not just the lead passenger, you can leave this turned on, and now it will send to not only the lead passenger but also the additional attendees. So I'll ignore a couple other ones here, and then I will apply this. And now here they are. You've got a pending custom email section down here, and much like with the reminders, you can edit them for this specific client. Like if you want to add another line in here to this client, you can type it in. Or if you want to change the send date, like I want to send this on this Wednesday the 2nd instead of Friday the 4th, I can do that, and now it will send out on that date. So, the reminder groups are great for keeping you organized, make sure you don't forget about anything, kind of help you guide you to follow your own process for every single trip or every single group. Whereas the email groups are great about saving you a massive amount of time and also allow you to do things that you don't otherwise have time to do. Because, realistically, we have some agencies that, each agent has a couple hundred of these going out every single month. So if you think about 100 emails, let's lowball it, let's say 50 emails a month that you are manually typing and sending. If you could automate that, how much time would that save you every day or week or month or year? Likely a significant amount of time. So, that's what I wanted to show you today. Does anyone have any overall questions on that? I see some chat items I can read through here. Okay, Stephanie, if we click to give access to our agents, can some do it and some not? It's all or nothing. So if you share them, it's shared with everyone. If you don't share them, it's not shared with anyone. So, I can't think of a situation in particular where you wouldn't want to share it with some, unless there was something specific in there that you wouldn't want another agent to send. In that case, I would just have your agent set them up individually then. Pam, you'd asked a few questions here. Is there a way to see if an email went out correctly? You created lead emails and would like to send out monthly emails to your leads. Yeah, so as soon as they have sent, they will no longer be in the pending section. So you can look in here, and if you see a prior date, if this was, say, September 12th, and it's still in here, that means it did not send. You can also check the correspondences tab of the client's profile, and you can see that in here. So like here's something that was sent to me. Here's that recipe that was sent to this client, which is me, on the 7th. So you can see it in there. Almost always when I see a situation where something was not sent, it is almost always because it was applied after the actual send date. So when you click that button to apply email group, and you see the preview of when it's going to send, if any of these dates are in the past, just know that it can't send because it would have already been triggered, say, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. However, you can still apply it and then scroll down, find the one with the date that's in the past, and change that to tomorrow's date. So, the earliest you can typically do in most cases is the following day. So if this said, the 12th, I could go in here and change it to send on the 15th and save, and then it will send out tomorrow morning. Okay, and you also had a question, what is the determining factor to set number of days in the monthly payment reminder emails based on a specific date of the month determined by user, no matter what your client's due date is, or based on the date of the initial deposit date? So that's the monthly payment reminders is not an email group email. You could use it for that. You could set up, say, 5 different emails and say like 30 days before, 60 days before, 90 days before, and so on. But I don't think that's needed because there is a whole different section for your auto email templates where you can set up monthly payment reminders, turn it on, and set the day of the month that you want those to go out. So I've got the 1st in here. Now, out of all these emails on here, the only one that requires an extra step is this exact one. So you have to have it turned on and filled out and all of that here. But you also, for any clients who you want to receive that monthly payment reminder, you need to go to their trip and you need to check this box to enable the monthly payment reminder. So in my case, if I turn this on, if it still wasn't paid in full, it would send a monthly payment reminder to this client on the first of each month.
Okay, that was my question. I wasn't sure if it was if for all of your clients it would go out on the first, or if it was based on individual clients. Say I have a client that their monthly payment would be due on the 15th, but I have another client it would be due on the first. So I need to determine how often those are going to go out, correct?
Well, the one I just showed you in the monthly payment reminders, those will only go out once a month, and you can only select one day of the month. So, I think if you can make up the rules on when those are due for each client. So, you would have to make all of them due on the 15th or all of them due on the 1st or whatever day, you want of the month.
And backing up on my first question there, I'm struggling because I've created some emails, like when I get an initial lead and I enter them in as just a lead, I'm not booking a trip for that. I don't have a trip date for them. I want to send out like a welcome email or, a monthly update email, and I'm having trouble in getting that connected to just the leads. When I go to select the group option, there's nothing there, even though I've created the email group and I've created the task.
Well, the trigger screen goes by that. So like this one is called lead
Right.
emails. If I'm on the trip screen and I click this, I will not see that as an option because that's not the correct trigger screen. However, if I go to a client's lead and I select this, I will see that there.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. I'm in my trip leads.
Okay. Send me an email and we can go over it separately
Okay.
if
Okay.
you have specific questions.
Okay.
Stephanie, it would be helpful to have a list of emails you have used. It's just hard to think of ones we might use, just ideas for them, not the actual reminder email, just examples. I mean, quite honestly, what I have in here is just stuff that came off the top of my head. Like if you read a lot of the verbiage in there, it's just gibberish that I've copied and pasted from somewhere just to fill out the actual email section. You're welcome to use the examples I showed today, like the excursions or the Club Mobe or the recipe or the whatever, anything that's in there, the specifics for each resort. Like if you look at my Jamaica ones for the individual resorts, I just put in, some info on that resort, like a link to look at the on-property activities or a link to pre-book spa appointments, and then finally a map of the property. I would say if you're wanting to get ideas, just look at the emails you've sent or you send manually now. And if you find yourself typing that same email over and over again for every client you book, determine, is there a way for me to automate that? Can I make it generic enough to work for pretty much any situation, or to where I don't have to create a new email group for every single trip? If the answer is yes to that, that's a great candidate to put in here so you never have to type that email ever again. Okay, Nicole, go over the lead trigger for email groups. I've tried to create a mock trip for myself and don't know how to get these to send. So that, again, it has to be set up. If it's for a specific lead, you have to send it from the lead screen, not the trip screen. So when you are creating, let me find one here. When you're creating an email group with lead as the trigger screen, if you just look at this and look at the triggers, you can see these are the different things that you can use to trigger it. So created date is when the lead was created. So that would be good for like that welcome email. If you want to send something, thank you for your interest or whatever, shortly after the lead was created, you could do that. You can also use the estimated booking date. I don't see a good use for that, honestly. lead status change date or status change to quote sent or trip date, which the trip date is the estimated trip date from there. So like this one's a big one to use, so status change to quote sent. This will be triggered if you mark a lead as quote sent today, then apply the email group. You could have a series of emails that go out to clients who you've sent a quote to. So you could have one that, basically if you send a quote and they don't reply to it or you don't book them, you could have one that goes out 2 days from now that says, hey, just checking in to see if you had any questions on the quote I sent you. You could have another one that goes out, 6 days later that's a little bit more urgent, like, hey, second request, just want to know if you had any questions. Are you still interested? Did you change your mind? And then maybe a third that's basically you saying, all right, I'm done. I'm closing your file. Happy to work with you in the future if you do show any interest, but, for the time being, since I haven't heard back, I'm going to close out your file to let them know, if you've given up. You can use it for things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it does completely. I really appreciate it. What I was doing, I was trying to create something from the auto email templates where there's a lead form response. Would y'all mess with it, or
Yeah.
is that what I? So yeah, so that does that. I was doing it completely wrong. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, so the lead form response goes out when they fill out the trip leads form that you can have on your website for them to show interest. That's what goes out automatically when they submit that.
Okay.
Usually it's thank you for submitting your information. We'll be in touch shortly. I'll reach out if I have any more questions for you or, whatever.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Phyllis, you want to go over how to apply these individual emails to all trips? You just simply go to the trip and you click apply email group. You select the one that you want. Sorry, I'm on a lead here, not a trip. Let's go back to the trip. Okay, so you go into the trip. Once you get everything entered, you have to have obviously the trip date entered, the final payment due date, depending on what you use for the triggers. And then once you've done that, you just click apply email group and you select the batch of emails that you want. So again, we'll use the Jamaica example. And once you select that, it'll show you a list of every email that is in that particular group that you've created. And you can simply just go through and ignore the ones you don't want to send to this client and then pick whether you want it to go to everyone like these or just this, just the lead passenger, and then click apply and you're done. Once you do that, it will be pending sending. You'll be able to see it down here at the bottom of the trip at any time. And let's say like this client, let's say that they next week, a friend of theirs told them about Club Mobe and they reach out and ask me and I book that for them now. I no longer need this email to go to them, so I can just come in here and delete it. But I'll keep the rest. Stephanie said, you just mean they wouldn't have to use the emails reminders if they choose not to. Yeah, they have to go out of their way to apply these. Phyllis, yes, you do have to apply each group to each individual trip unless you are talking about, say, you have a group booking and you have a series of emails in the group, and set up with group as a trigger screen that you want to send out. So that's the other thing. I didn't really touch on that a whole lot, but here in the group profile, if I have a series of emails that I've set up at a group level, like maybe one of those is send me your flights. I think I might actually have that in here. So let me see. I don't remember. Destination wedding group emails. No, I don't have one for flights, but pretend this is for, send me your flights. And I've got it set to send out 113 days before the trip date of the group. That would simply send an email to every person linked to this group. So I have no trips linked to it, but anybody that's listed in here, it will send an email to every one of those people saying, you need me to send me your flight schedule. Just a little heads up for the future. If that's a bad example. Don't spend a whole lot of time creating that, because we're very, very close to releasing a new feature that's going to be a game changer for those that book groups and are always struggling to collect flight information from your clients. So that's probably a bad example, but just think of any email that you want to go out to every member of the group. You can set it up at a group level, apply it one time to this group profile, and it will send to every person linked to that group via their trip. So it saves you time because you only have to apply it one time. The downside, though, is it sends to everyone. So you can't really get super specific. So I'll go back to that terrible example of air again. If you have 20 rooms booked, 10 of those people have already sent you their flight schedules, or 10 of those rooms have sent you the flight schedules for everyone in that room, it's still going to send to all 20 trips, everybody that's in all 20 of those rooms. So, half of the people don't even need that email, but it's going to send it anyway. Now, to get around that, kind of, if you want to still do it that way, is just use verbiage like, if you haven't already done so, please send me your flight schedule. Then they know, you won't get emails from the people that are like, hey, I already sent it to you. They can see right there, okay, this is going to everyone. Doesn't apply to me because I already sent my flights in. All right, so it's all Mexico bookings example. I mean, I don't have a ton in there. It's kind of the same idea though. You can create a series of these for every single situation. So I don't even know if I have anything. Yeah, so like a recipe, I think I did guacamole for this one. Whatever's cliched food or drink from there, you can do just to, get them excited. Yeah, so I put guacamole in there. Things to know, tourist card, whatever. You can put that stuff in, create each individual email, and then every time you book a trip to Mexico, you would say, I want to apply an email group, select your Mexico one, ignore any that don't apply, choose whether you want it to go to the lead passenger or everyone, and then click apply. Any other questions anyone has? No? All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time. I hope this was helpful. If you do have any additional questions you think of later on, you can email me, Stephen, STEPHEN, @vacationcrm.com. Thank you all and have a great rest of your week. Yes, it will be posted in the user center.